Oh, good morning, good morning, good morning. Let's check and make sure I'm streaming where I'm supposed to be streaming, when I'm supposed to be streaming. All right. Good morning, y'all. How's everybody? It's Monday. It's exciting. It's exciting times. 10:24. I like it. There we go. Look, I'm live on X. Okay, that means it's streaming where it's supposed to be working. So good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm Drew Lentz, the Wireless Nerd, and this is the Waves Podcast. What's new, what's now, what's next happening in the tech industry with a little bit of emphasis on wireless. What a week, man. You know, last week there was a bunch of stuff I wanted to talk about. It just got crazy. There's so many things going on. I was out in Vegas, got to tag along with my wife to the MJ BizCon, learn all about tech in the cannabis industry. And then got to go hang out at AWS reInvent, which was pretty awesome. Saw some Wi-Fi stands all over the place. That was cool. Big shout out to the team over there. That was really cool. It was neat. It was neat to be walking around to see those Wi-Fi stands everywhere. At multiple hotels, multiple casinos, and just looking around. There's some really good events they were hosting there. My first time at AWS. That's pretty awesome. What a song, man. Whoa, there it goes. Comes back up. You know, jungle music always reminds me of the 90s and 2000s. Just getting into, just reminds me of all the fun stuff that was happening. Beautiful .com days. Anyway, so what's going on with you guys? Lots of stuff happening, man. Lots of things happening. So I want to talk a little bit about what I saw and what was going on. But before I get into that, I try and stay away from politics on this podcast. The other one's not so much. But I will let you know that there's something that's going on right now, and with what's happening in the United States. The FCC chairwoman, Mrs. Jessica Rosenworcel, is talking about the Affordable Connectivity Program, and there's something that's happening right now where if Congress doesn't act, if nothing happens, over 20 million households will lose access to the internet. The ACP vouchers provide a $30 monthly broadband discounts to people that are low income, and the Biden administration is seeking $6 billion for 2024, but so far nothing's passed. And if it doesn't happen by April, that looks like the numbers between 22 and 25 million households that will lose it. We've come so far, we can't go back, Rosenworcel said. We need Congress to continue to fund this program. If Congress does not, in April of next year, we'll have to unplug households. And based on current projections, there'll be about 25 million households we will unplug from the internet in April. So if you know anyone that is a higher ranking official, let them know that ACP is pretty important to a whole lot of people. And I got to say, I think a couple episodes ago, I talked about different alternatives to laying fiber in the ground and what people could do for connectivity. And you started to see the hotspot program where carriers were providing hotspots and school districts were signing up for hotspots, how now that's going away as well. And there were so few communities that made significant investments in their community that took advantage of this time to build out networks that students could use, that now, and communities could use, that now that those programs are going away, and now that ACP is hopefully it gets, everything goes through with that. But if it doesn't, now everyone again is at risk of losing connectivity. And now is the time for people to make these investments in their districts and in their communities to make sure that we don't have the broadband divide that we had before, and that now is, threatening to come back because of things like this. So I know the Biden administration is looking for $6 billion. And with that $6 billion, if it comes through, if, some of these BEAD funds and all these other things happen, I really, really, really hope that communities are using every single dollar that they can in the wisest way possible to provide as much connectivity as they can. And in some communities, that is not fiber optic access. Sometimes it's 5G access. Sometimes it's Wi-Fi access. Sometimes it's a combination of both. Sometimes it's a combination of fiber and microwave and 3G, 4G, 5G, whatever G is out there at the time. leverage what you have, leverage those dollars to make an impact in the community. Fiber's great, and fiber's not going away, but it also is one of the more expensive options. So don't think that just because you can't trench fiber doesn't mean that your community can't do something. Now is the time to do something, especially if this stuff goes away. So I'm not, this is again, not political, but just, I mean, just something that's out there. If ACP doesn't get renewed, you got 25 million people who will again be looking for some way to connect. So please stay cognizant of that. And yeah, so that's my, that's my rant for today on, broadband access. Anyway, okay, so that being said, back to the other stuff. So I got to go to the MJ BizCon, the Marijuana Business Conference, and I wanted to go for a couple of different reasons. I love understanding what's going on in technology, and I look at this as a combination of not just what's happening in the industrial space, but in the retail space as well. And either retail, delivery, whatever it is. The use of technology is huge to me. I love when people leverage it and they do great things with it. And so I really wanted to see where the marijuana industry was with this in the states where it has been decriminalized and legalized for the most part. So I got to walk around, man, and I saw some stuff. My wife and I got to see how everything from the lighting and the sensors and the irrigation and the growing and the cultivation all the way to the harvesting and the trimming and the packaging and the go to market and everything. That show was a tremendous show for showing the entire ecosystem in that business. But I kept walking around, and two things were really clear to me. And I feel like I'm a late arriver to this. Even the people that were there were saying, yeah, you should have seen the show 5 years ago. And I'm not even thinking about 5 years ago. I'm thinking about 5 years in the future. It reminded me so much of the .com days, like just so much, where you had this thing that people knew was a thing. And the early adopters were these people who had done it in their basements and who had built these small internet service providers and who had built these tiny web pages and who had done things like Yahoo and like Google and, kitted together experiments. And then big tech just formed out of that. And you see that happening in the cannabis industry. You see literally people who are doing this in their basement, struggling with how they grow their operations to something that can generate the output that's needed by the industry, that the consumers are looking for. And it's just so fascinating to watch. And then I started to think about tech. And I think about, on the production side and on the growing and cultivation side, what was being done. And I got to, interface with a whole bunch of people and Foes Lighting those guys were really cool to talk to. And it just made me wonder how much tech is being used in these grow operations. So I got some really good insight. One of the statistics I heard is 70 to 80% of the growers that are out there are leveraging technology in some way, shape, or form, especially for vertical growth, especially for indoor stuff where you can control the atmosphere. You can control how much irrigation you're pumping in, how much light you're giving, what type of light you're giving, when you're giving it to them, when you're feeding the plants, what you're feeding the plants, and then pulling that data back via sensors and via some type of IoT network to feed it into a system to understand what's happening. And I think that that's fascinating, especially when you look at hydroponics overall for not just for the marijuana industry, but for tomatoes and lettuce and solving the world's food supply shortage. There's so many fascinating things that are happening there. But it also made me think about the retail side and what they're doing, in their retail stores. What type of Wi-Fi connectivity do they have? What type of point of sale systems do they have? Dutchie was a great company that I got to, learn a little bit about. And, then video surveillance. A lot of mandates are happening in these states where they're saying in order to open a store, you have to have mandated video surveillance of a certain amount of time with, whatever backup is there. So I really wanted to focus in on that. And I walked around the show floor looking for tech, just looking. And I only saw like three tech companies were there, maybe 2 tech companies were there who were saying, hey, here's what we do, full stack solutions. So it was, it was interesting to see that it didn't have such a strong presence. So I totally expect that to change over the next couple of years. But if you're in the space and you've got, if you live in one of the states in the U.S. where this has been decriminalized, that's definitely something you should reach out to. That's a market of people that need this, that can take advantage of it, that will take advantage of it. Just really, just wanted to spread that a little bit because what I saw was fascinating, but I also saw that there's such room for growth, no pun intended, in that space. Then afterwards, at night, I got to go over to reInvent, and I got to see what Amazon was doing. And oh my God, what a show wow, if you've never been to reInvent, the AWS show, it's expensive, but it looked like it was so worth it. And it, you just see all of the cloud, if you will. It was just cloud everywhere. I went from smoke clouds to data clouds all in one day, and it was really interesting. I think some of the standout things that I saw were around leading into retail. So NRF, National Retail Federation, the NRF show is coming up in January, and so I've got retail on my mind right now. What's retail doing? How are they doing it? What are they leveraging? Because retail touches us every day. Every body that purchases something in this country or in any country touches retail. And so the way that tech is evolving in retail is fascinating. I got to see the Grab and Go store by Amazon, and one of the things I saw was their single authentication deal where Amazon One, where you go up to a little terminal and you put you log in with your Amazon account and you associate it with your credit card and your ID, and then you put your hand over it and it scans your hand. And now you can use that technology anywhere it's available. You just scan your hand and it gives you immediate authentication to, verification of your age, authentication to your credit card, gives you the opportunity to do the grab and go stuff. But I like to think about the implications for retail overall with that. And when you combine what's going on in cannabis with what's going on in traditional retail in the Amazon One, there was like a really cool tie over there for me, because walking around with my buddy Bender, looking at both of these and understanding how they work together, it was fascinating to see that in the cannabis industry, when you queue up to go into a store, there has to be an ID verification. You have to know who you are and what age you are and if you're allowed to buy it or not. And then that ties into your transaction and checking you in and putting you in a place in line and queuing you up to go to the register. And if you solve all those problems with just scanning your handprint, just scanning your hand using that Amazon One, what an interesting take on that. Now, I was a little skeptical, I'm not going to lie, because, it's crazy to think you just scan your hand and your entire world is on there. But Amazon already has that. They already have everything except for the actual imprint from my hand. So to see that was really interesting. reInvent had so many different things. One of the great things we saw was a cloud controlled bartender, where you could get on an app or you could get on a web page and you could tell it to make you a drink, and it had 12 liquors that were hooked up to the machine and would send it via AWS Lambda, and it would queue up the drink and it would serve the drink to you. So it uses the cloud for operation. That was pretty cool. A lot of emphasis on security there. Got to meet Miss Merritt from oh God, I forget. And then of course I forget the name of the company, but talked a little bit about security and what's happening and how all these things rely on security. And again, back on the cannabis side, what are they doing for security? Because God, the attacks, MGM, the big cyber attack that happened there, and then at Caesars, and then, you talk about this quote unquote budding industry in cannabis, like what susceptibility are they going to have to some of these hacks? And then you think, well, it's a cash-based business, so, you can't just take cash. I guess you can't freeze a bank account. You can't freeze credit card transactions because it's not there. So I'm curious to see what the threat landscape is going to look like in that cannabis industry. So that's what was going on. Really interesting to me. I had a good time at both of those shows. I would strongly suggest that if you play in any one of those spaces, whether it's cloud, definitely go check out AWS if you get a chance. reInvent was really, really neat. Lots of information. Tons of people were there for that conference. And then if you're in the cannabis industry, MJ BizCon was really just start to finish of what's happening in cannabis. So that's what's going on from the show perspective. Again, you've heard me mention it before. We've got CES coming up in January. I'll be out there. If you're going to be out there, let us know. I'm going to do some fun interviews. We've got a really cool crossover episode of Waves that's going to happen. The plans are in the works. It looks like it's scheduled for the 10th of January. So I'll let you know more details on that. But that's about a month away. We're going to have a really cool crossover episode. It's going to be two teams working together. So hopefully that'll be fun coming at you live from CES. NRF is happening right after that. Still no word if I'm 100% going to go to that show or not. But if I do, it'll be phenomenal. And then my talk did get selected for WLPC in Phoenix, so I will be giving a presentation at WLPC talking about AI and the way that interacts with doing wireless site surveys. And basically the gist is, there are a lot of tools that are out there that can give you information leveraging AI and ML. How do we use those tools day to day to do our jobs? And are they going to take our jobs, or are they just going to make our lives better? So I'm pretty sure you can guess which one. But it's going to be a fun talk either way, especially because everything is just moving so rapidly in the whole AI space that between now and February, God only knows where it's going to be. Now, what I did want to talk about, I talked about the ACP stuff, covered marijuana industry, covered reInvent. So the last topic that I want to talk about is neutral host CBRS, because there's two companies out there that are offering neutral host CBRS. So what that means is, and this is like the golden use case for CBRS. This is, the DAS, the digital antenna system, the DAS and repeater system for so long has been the solution, where if you're staying in a hotel or if you're in a place, Disney World or Universal or whatever it is, and there's more facility that's needed in order to serve the number of clients that are there. Maybe it's out in the middle of nowhere. A DAS system would basically tie into a network and then feed that data back to a carrier, Verizon, T-Mobile, whoever it is. And that was always the use case. And DAS is expensive, and it's not easily deployed. And there's a lot of really good solutions that have solved some of those problems. But at the end of the day, it's everyone's always looking for a better, more cost-effective alternative. So when CBRS came out, operating 3.5, 3.65 spectrum, and had some of the same characteristics, and was that mid-band 5G play, now all of a sudden CBRS was like this viable alternative, because I could put a CBRS unit. I think the rule of thumb I think that CommScope used a while back was one CBRS eNode for every 3 or 4 access points or something like that. Where if you populate your hotel with these CBRS access points, then a phone that uses band 48, LTE band 48, like an iPhone or Samsung phone, then that phone could communicate with that CBRS node, and it could carry that voice traffic and that data traffic back. So negating the need for DAS, because now you can just connect to the CBRS AP. And that was great. And it was like, oh man, this is going to be so cool. But no one was doing it, because the problem is your phone could communicate with the device, but the device had to communicate with a gateway that had some type of vendor, or I'm sorry, this neutral host system that could connect to multiple providers, whether it was Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, whoever it was. So I got to see this firsthand. I got to see this vendor neutral stuff, or this carrier neutral agnostic approach, when I was at Meta. There was this group that was there, and there's a product that's now come out called Infinity, and Infinity offers the ability to be a neutral host for CBRS. So I can go and deploy a whole bunch of CBRS devices at a location, and I can tie them all back to Infinity, and Infinity has negotiated the contracts with T-Mobile and AT&T. And so my phone will just automatically roam to the local network at the local hotel that I'm staying at, pipe it back using CBRS, which is extremely low cost comparatively speaking to DAS, and then send it back across the network. And next thing you know, I've got a really great call quality happening wherever I am. And that's the end of it, right? Nobody cares how it gets connected as long as it gets connected. So when you're talking about end users who are using technology, they don't care if it's CBRS or it's 5G or 6G or 2.5 gig or whatever it is. Nobody cares as long as it works. And CBRS, working hand in hand with a Wi-Fi provider, being able to hand off from CBRS back to Wi-Fi back and forth, that's like been this golden deal. And so now, Infinity, Joel, dude, the first time I saw this project, Joel Lindholm, the guy who's in charge of it, I looked at it and I was just like, oh my God, I freaked out. Like I lost my mind at how insane this is, because this was the promise of CBRS. And now they're up and running. So go check out Infinity, INFINI-G. Infinity is a company that's doing that. But so is a new company called Khajiit, Kageet. So Khajiit has now joined and this whole play, and they've made announcements that they work with T-Mobile and AT&T, and Verizon supposedly is coming to both of those. But as soon as it does, this is that whole CBRS thing. So if you operate a CBRS network, if you're thinking about deploying a CBRS network and you don't know how to have that tie over back to the carrier, or the carrier the carry over to the carrier, whatever it is, if that's what you're looking for, those are two companies. Please reach out to Joel, let him know that I talked about it, or reach out to me and I'll be happy to connect you. And then if you know the team at Khajiit, reach out to them as well, because what a cool space. Finally starting to see, and DAS is great, but DAS is so expensive, right? Starting to see how CBRS can truly make an impact in that space. So anyway, that's my 12 minutes for the day. I try and keep these things short, just a quick brief update on what's going on. Again, what's new, what's now, what's next. These are the three things jumbled into that. But what an incredible week last week to see so much innovation at MJBizCon and at AWS reInvent. It was just really neat to see those industries embracing technology. Obviously AWS is a tech company, so they're not really embracing it. They're kind of leading the way. but seeing at MJ BizCon where people are starting to embrace technology to help them out, that was really neat to see. And then just Infinity and the whole neutral host with CBRS. What a cool thing. So until next week, have yourself a wonderful week. Don't forget, if you know someone who's in Congress, if they keep stalling, 25 million homes are going to lose access. So please, please, please push for that ACP, or push for communities to do something that is permanent. Push for them to do something that's going to allow access to the internet, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in that community. You know, we did it in the city of McAllen. We're doing it in the city of FAR. There's all these great projects across the nation. They're making it happen. Don't hesitate. Now is a perfect time to start building out these networks. Anyway, that being said, have a wonderful week. I will talk to you next week. Enjoy your holiday parties this weekend. I'm trying to think if there's anything else coming up between now and then. But you know, I do want to do. I might do a pop in this week, just a special episode where we talk to some people about some really cool tech that's out there. So I might start doing a couple more of these. Anyway, have a great week. We will see you next week. Enjoy it. Hope your Wi-Fi is strong and your DNS resolution is quick. Have a good one.